Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous. A couple of years ago I did a video about how to chalk paint a dining room hutch, and I did it in all these crazy colors to match my sewing room studio, and you guys loved it. That is actually our most popular video, even though we have dozens and dozens of videos on sewing tutorials as well. So today I'm back. We're going to do another chalk painting tutorial, and this time I'm working on this sewing cabinet. I picked this up. It was a Craigslist find. I kind of have a problem when it comes to collecting antique sewing machines, and a lot of times those come with cabinets as well. This is going to be really cool for today because now I have a quilt shop, so I'm not just working out of my little sewing room. So this is going to become a display in our quilt shop, and as you can see behind me, all of our furniture is white. So I have picked up some white Annie Sloan Chalk Paint, and we're going to be using that. The first thing I need to do with this though is I need to wipe this down. With Annie Sloan you don't have to do any paint or prep, so it's really great. It speeds up your painting time quite a bit, but I do need to wipe this down really good. It's got a lot of dust and cobwebs on it, especially on the inside, and I need to remove all the hardware and take the doors off the front. And my daughter is here, and she's very insistent that I not color in between her lines, which I'm not going to do. But if you hear her in the background, that's the future quilter having a good time while I do some painting. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and take off all this hardware, and I'm gonna put it in a bag so I don't lose it, and then I'll be back to show you how to paint this. All right, so I have taken apart all of the hardware on here, and I put it in a bag for later. I'm gonna wash this stuff off too in the sink just to get the grime and dirt off. This is a really old cabinet, so you've got lots of years of dust and debris that can end up on here. When you're cleaning, you want to pay, this is one of the drawers, really close attention to down in the grooves, because that's where your dust is going to settle. And even though you don't need to do a lot of prep, like you don't have to sand this before you do Annie Sloan Chalk Paint, but you do need it really clean because the paint is not going to stick to dust. The dust is going to come off and then your paint is going to come off. So you just want to make sure that you would really clean. So I just used, water and a paper towel and went over it really well, because I didn't want to introduce any chemicals that might react with the paint. So I just did that and cleaned really good. Pay close attention to any grooves where the wood is molded, especially in a sewing cabinet. You also want to pay attention to any drawers that may be on the inside of the drawer. And on a sewing cabinet, you're also going to have usually a compartment that opens. So I can open this up here. So inside here was really disgusting. So this is where the sewing machine will sit, and people just aren't gonna dust it out ever. So I really scrubbed big time in that part. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this back together. When I paint the initial top, I'm gonna do it with this in place, and then I'm gonna lift these parts out later to get the sides, so that way we have a nice clean edge. But I wanna make sure that I've got a nice smooth surface to work with when I'm painting the top, so I'm gonna leave those in place for now. So in my last video, I get lots of questions because Annie Sloan Chalk Paint isn't exactly the least expensive chalk paint out there. I've tried a lot of them. I've tried Rust-Oleum, both in the spray paint and the can. I've tried the Valspar, and this is the paint that I like the best. It's a little bit more expensive, but it works better and with less coats. So in the end, I think you probably end up spending about the same. I'm not making any money by telling you that. This video is not sponsored by Annie Sloan or an entity that sells it. I'm not a stockist. This is just my personal opinion after having tried some of the other options that are out there. So I also get questions like, they want to know if they can use a different primer, or, can you get away with using less paint? And just, if you want a piece that looks really good, just use the good stuff. Don't be cheap about it, use the good stuff. So if you ask me about primers or anything like that, I'm not gonna answer it in the comments because I've answered it right here. This is a brand new can. I am using pure white. because I want it to be the same kind of white that I have on all the other furniture here, because I want the brightly colored things that are going to sit on top of this to really pop and have a good background. So this is a completely full can, so I'm going to show you how full it is at the end as well, so you can kind of get an idea of how much paint you would use to do a piece about this size. This is, I guess, about the size of a TV stand, one of the older models. So I'm going to use 2 brushes with that. I'm going to use my Annie Sloan flat number 30 to get in the grooves. And then this one has a 45 on it. I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but it has a thicker bristle. So this is really good for, like, you know, going all over the place. Obviously I need a paint can opener. And then when we're all done, we are going to wax this, and I'm going to use clear wax on this one because I want to keep that crisp white look on it. And then I've got my clear wax brush for this one. I also have another brush that I use just for dark wax, so you want to keep those separate because it will, no matter how good you clean this, some is going to get left on, and you don't want to be transferring those from one to another. All right, we're gonna start off and open this. And again, this is a brand new quart of Annie Sloan in the pure white. Put this off to the side. You can see here, this can is very, very full. It's the first time I'm opening this. So you guys are gonna get to see about how much paint it takes to paint the entire top, inside, drawers, all that stuff on a sewing cabinet. It's about the same size as a TV stand, so that'll give you some ideas on how much paint it takes, so that way you can plan your budget. As again, I know people complain about the price, but it's really good stuff and it goes a long way. So we'll show you how much it actually takes to do this. So since this is my first coat, I know I'm not gonna get full coverage with it. My goal is just to get a first layer down. I'm gonna be able to see a lot of wood grain through it. So I'm gonna go in with my larger brush. I'm not gonna put a lot on the tip of it, just kind of enough, maybe to like here. So that way I have enough to go around the top of my sewing cabinet and get that first base coat on. Once that's on, you can build up the paint with as many layers as you feel you need to get the coverage that you're looking for. So I'm just gonna dip just a little bit in here. There's not very much on that brush at all. And I'm just gonna kind of go every which way with this cabinet. With Annie Sloan, you don't really need to try to paint all in one direction. It kind of works better if you kind of go every which way. And right now in this first layer, you're going to see a lot of brush strokes, and that's okay. As you build it up, that starts to minimize. The key is to just smooth it out and not ever glob that paint on. All right, so I've got the top of this done. As you can see, it's really patchy, and that's okay. And we've got brush strokes going every which way, but that will minimize as we build this up. So I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna paint all the way around the outside and also the drawer fronts. And then by the time that's done, this will be good and dry and ready for a second coat. Okay, so I finished the first layer. I decided not to do the inside of the cabinet with white. The reason why is because it was really dirty in there when I cleaned, and I was worried that if there was any dust left, then I would get it in the paint and that it would get all over the finish of it. So if I do the inside, I'm gonna do it with a different color that's darker, so if there is dust in it, it's not gonna be as noticeable. So I wanna show you guys how much paint I have left here. We've got almost the entire can here. So I just went in really lightly with just a really dry brush, and that is maybe half an inch below where it started. So there's still tons and tons of paint on this. I do have a little bit of discoloration here where there must have been something on the wood, so that's showing through brown. So we're gonna keep building that spot up and we'll see how it goes. So this coverage right now is still really patchy. That's okay. We wanted to go in with that light coat. Even though it looks patchy and it shows all these brush strokes, it actually is really smooth. So as we continue to build this up, we're gonna continue to have that nice smooth finish. So I'm gonna go in and do the second coat now. So I've got the top done. This is definitely gonna take a third coat to cover, but already a lot of the patchiness is gone. I can still see some brush strokes just because it isn't totally even covered yet. So I'm gonna keep going around the entire piece again and do that second coat and get that smoother coverage. And then by the time we're done with that, again, we'll be ready for the third coat because this will have all dried. Because we're doing those real thin coats, we're building it up slowly, we're not using a lot of paint, and we're gonna be able to get some really good even coverage. All right, so I finished my second coat. I'm gonna do a third. It definitely needs it. I can still see bits of the wood. But again, we're just doing really light coats and gradually building that up, and that helps us get a really smooth finish, which is really important when you're painting a piece white. We'll do a little bit of check-in on how much paint I have used. I have used about 1/4 of the can so far. And that is with 2 coats, doing the outside only, and I've done the back because this piece is gonna be seen from both the back and the front. So I've done the door fronts, basically all around the outside of this, and it's about the size of one of those older TV consoles. So I'm gonna go ahead and do my third coat. And I'm gonna keep going. I'm still not using very much paint. I feel like I even use less paint on coat 2 than I did on coat 1. And I think this might be the last one we need. This is really kind of filling up nicely now. And is covering those areas where I could still see the wood grain. So at this point, since I think this might be my last coat, I'm really gonna work hard to smooth out those paint brushes strokes. And so I'm still putting it on, going every which way. But once I feel like I've covered, then I'm kind of doing a nice sweep with my brush in one direction. And the important thing, and this is really important when you have Annie Sloan paint, because we are doing such thin layers that it's drying very quickly, is you want to maintain a wet line of paint. And the reason why is because if you don't, you're going to get these little bits of flecks in here, and you're going to wonder, what the heck is this? We did a really good job cleaning. But what it is it's paint that's getting pulled up that is not quite dry. It's still a little tacky. So I'm just trying to work really fast and always work on an area that's still pretty wet. I don't want it to be too dry when I'm working with it, or I'm gonna get those flecks. Okay, so we'll see how this dries, but I think that this might be the last coat that we need for the body. I may do one more 4th coat on the top just to help make that really solid, but we'll see how it dries. But it's going super fast. I'm not using a ton of paint, so I definitely could do a 4th coat on the whole thing if I want to and just get a really nice solid finish. So I'm gonna go do that and then we'll be back. All right, so time to check in. I have finished my 3rd coat and I have painted all the sides, including the back and the front of the drawers. And I think if I would have used a darker coat, I think I would be done right now. But I am still seeing a little bit of the wood grain showing through. So I'm gonna do a 4th coat on the top, and then I'm gonna take a look and see what I think of all the other areas and how they're drying and if they also need one. I definitely want to do the top again because that's the area people are going to see the most. So if that one is looking blotchy, then that's not good. So I'm going to do at least a 4th coat on the top and sort of see what I think on the others, because that's not going to be as obvious for everyone. I still do have a little bit of discoloration here from something that ended up on the wood at some point. So we'll just have to set something on top of that because I don't think it's going to be covered at this point. To check in where we're at, we probably have a little bit more than half of the can still there. And that's with the TV counsel size piece. So this is a really big piece. We got 3 coats on, and if I would have used a darker color, we would definitely be done now, but because it is so light, it's gonna need something else. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that 4th coat on the top. I'm gonna let it dry and take a look at the other pieces and see if we need it more. If I do more, it probably is just gonna be a little bit of light stuff on the drawers, or the doors that open, and I probably will leave everything else. Now, if I was going to distress this, I probably would call it done at this point because it's good enough and we wanna have that little rough look. But I'm gonna do one more here because I want a nice smooth finish. Now for this last one, I'm gonna go ahead and this is gonna be my one that I'm going to go from side to side completely on. So I can get this nice, smooth line. And I'm gonna work quickly enough so that when I'm done here, I can go from one side to the other, completely from one side. And then that will help eliminate having some brush strokes there. All right, so I am loving the coverage level with this 4th coat. I'm just gonna go ahead and do the 4th coat on the whole thing, just because I really am liking the way that this is looking. And so I'm gonna do that, and then we'll check back and see paint levels so you can truly see how much paint is used up when you're doing something about the size of a TV console. This is a sewing cabinet. It's a very large sewing cabinet, so if you did a smaller one, you wouldn't use near as much of this paint. So I'll check back in a second. So I did a really super light 4th coat on this, and I'm really loving the coverage. We are officially done painting at this point. Since the coverage for the 4th coat was so light, I'm still at about half a can used. You can kind of see it there for this entire sewing console. It's about the size of like an older TV console, if that's something you're looking at, or a buffet. And that was 4 really light coats, gradually building it up. We've got some really smooth coverage, minimal brush strokes are happening. It's still drying, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave this overnight, and then tomorrow I'm gonna come back and do some clear wax on top, so that way I can just protect this finish and make it kind of shiny. So for all of you who watched my last video on how to chalk paint a hutch, and Everybody always asks the question of, do I really need to use all that much chalk paint? Can I use something else underneath? I did this whole thing for half a can. So the Annie Sloan Chalk Paint is only sold in 2 sizes. There's a little tiny size, and then there's the quart size. And so you would not be able to do this with the teeny size, but you definitely have a lot left over with the quart size. So spend the money. Don't worry about using too much paint, because a little bit of this goes a long way. And this is literally the best stuff that I've used. I've tried the Valspar, I've tried the Rust-Oleum in the spray paint and in the can, and this stuff is so easy to work with, and you get great results, and the coverage is fabulous, and I just love it. And it's worth the money, and it really goes a long way. Like, I definitely have enough left here to do probably another dresser, maybe a headboard, and still get a lot of use out of this. So check it out. We'll come back and we'll do the clear wax tomorrow. But for you guys, it'll be just in the next frame. All right, so it is the next day. Everything has dried beautifully. There's minimal brush strokes that I can see here. It's a real smooth white finish, which is exactly what I was going for. I'm going to use Annie Sloan's Soft Wax and Clear for this project. You can use many different color waxes, but for this one I want it to be as white as possible, so we're going to stick with that clear coat. What it's going to do is it's going to look like it's enhancing the color a little bit. It might look a little darker when it's going on, but then when it dries it is very clear, and it just kind of gives it a little bit of shine and helps protect your finish. So especially if you've worked really hard to get this looking good, you don't want to skip the wax. So what I'm doing, so I'm just kind of patting my brush in to get some on it. I don't want a ton of wax because it's going to go a long way. And then I'm just going to start working it in. I kind of start in circular motions, and you just kind of want to rub it in. Okay, so once you get a little bit on, then you want to take a rag, and you want a no lint cloth. So like an old t-shirt is great. And then you just want to wipe it down. And this helps smooth the wax. It removes any excess wax that might be there. So I'm just going to keep going, doing the whole top. I've got to do the drawer fronts and everything too. You should do the same at home if you're following along and doing this. Just get really good coverage. It's really kind of hard to tell on this white where it's at, just because with the colors it does like make it look a little darker, but it does dry clear. Here I kind of have to look for a sheen to see where I've been and where I still need to cover. But I can feel the difference too. Like I can feel it's been waxed here, and here it still feels that chalky finish. So you can kind of tell that way too. Okay, so it's been about 2 hours since I put my final coat of wax on here. I remember I did 2 coats for the top and 1 everywhere else, because the top's gonna get a little bit more wear and tear. And I also got these edges really good, because that's another place where it can get some wear and tear. Now I need to buff this out. Now, if you've watched some videos online, they'll tell you that you can use steel wool on this. That's not true, don't do it. It can discolor the clear wax, so especially if you're doing it on white, you're really gonna see that, and it will no longer be a true white piece. So I have an actual buffing brush for this. It's got some nice stiff bristles here that I can use to buff this down. I've also used a really fine sandpaper and just like real lightly gone over it like that. With this one, you can give it a little bit more elbow grease. You want to do this before the wax sets completely. So within a couple hours is good. Wait a couple hours and then do it. But definitely don't wait any longer than 24 hours or it's going to be pretty useless. This is what it already is feeling kind of like it's drying a little bit, but it's still a tad bit tacky. So this is a good time to do it. And this is what's gonna help take it from that chalky finish that you feel before you do anything to it to a really nice smooth finish. So to do this, I'm putting some good pressure here. I'm just kind of going with the grain of the wood. I kind of feel it after. And before it feels nice and smooth, or like the after, and before it still feels tacky. So I just kind of want to keep going over this. I'm not going to distress this piece, but if you were going to, now would be the time to do it. You would go ahead and distress it wherever you want to distress, and then add another coat or two of wax on top of that. And this is really like a tactile feeling here. Like when you go over it, you want to see, like I'm feeling it's a little stickier here. So now it feels smoother. Could use a little more over here. And you just kind of want to feel for where does it feel like nice and smooth, and where does it still feel a little sticky. So this is it. We've got the hardware back on and everything back together. I'm really loving how this is going together. In a couple of days, once the wax has cured a little bit more, we'll take some photos so you guys can see some really cool afters. But I don't want to put anything on top of this for at least a day or two. A week would be great, and that would allow your wax to cure, so that way if you put something on it, you don't get an impression from whatever that object is. But I'm really loving how this turned out. It looks really great. That white really covered wonderfully. I love how the hardware is now popping, whereas before it was just kind of a blah, you know, extension of the brown, whereas now it's this nice, rich, chocolatey copper finish, and it looks really cool. So I'm really excited about it. I can't wait to turn this into a display here at Quilt Addicts Anonymous in Rock Island, Illinois. And I shared as I was doing this, behind the scenes look of what I was up to, and someone said, I think I have your before. So if you have a sewing cabinet that you are going to redo with Annie Sloan, or any way, just shoot me a picture when you're done. You can email me at stephanie@quiltaddictsanonymous.com, and I might share your info, or tag us at Quilt Addicts Anonymous on Instagram. We'll see it there, and it would be super cool. I really have an addiction to chalk paint, the same way I do for quilting, and I really love transforming a piece and taking something that looks really dated and bringing it into a new life. This white really modernizes this piece and really honors the character of it, because we can see all these great details now that, you know, were just kind of blah before. So that's it for this video tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it answers your questions of how much chalk paint you really need to use. Again, we did about half a can of chalk paint to do this piece. It's about the size of maybe a small dresser or a older TV console. So you can really go a long ways with this. And I still have plenty to do another project. So if you're worried about cost, it's okay, just get the quart. It's gonna go a long way, you'll be fine. And we just did 4 really light layers on this, gradually building it up so that we got nice, good coverage. So if you like this, we've got a couple other chalk paint tutorial videos and painting videos. I'll link them in the description for the video, so check those out. And if you like to sew, we've obviously got a lot of fabric here, so check out shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. We specialize in modern and contemporary quilting fabrics and notions and threads and everything else that you need to go with it. And I'm a pattern designer as well. We don't have any in the background here, but we've got more than a dozen original patterns that look challenging but are actually pretty simple to accomplish, much like this chalk painting project. So I hope you use it to transform something in your life. And until next time, happy quilting.